You think you don't have friends because you're different. You think you don't belong in this world because you're deeper than them. You think the problem is society, the environment, the people around you who don't understand you. But no, the truth is, you're not isolated. You're being misread. And worse, you're sending signals that make others not want to get close to you. No one tells you this directly. No one looks at you and says, "You don't have friends because you seem like someone not worth connecting with." They don't need to say it. They just avoid you. Silently, politely, distantly. And you call that not a match. But in reality, that's a form of rejection. Silent, consistent, repeated. You walk into a group. You don't do anything wrong. You don't say anything stupid. But somehow you're still placed on the outside. Not because you lack value, but because you don't know how to communicate that value. You're playing a game that you don't know the rules of. You think just being yourself is enough. You think just being sincere is enough. But the world doesn't work like that. People don't respond to your true self. They respond to how they perceive you in the first few seconds. And if that perception says you are low value, everything you do after that only confirms it. The most dangerous thing is not that you don't have friends, it's that you don't know why. Because if you can't see this, you will keep repeating the same pattern, the same feeling, the same result. And you'll start to believe that it's your destiny. It's not. You just haven't looked deep enough. And if you don't understand this right now, you will keep being ignored without ever knowing why. I want you to recall a very familiar situation. You enter a conversation. You try to appear friendly. You nod more than usual. You laugh when others laugh. You respond quickly. You try to keep the atmosphere pleasant. You think you're doing it right. You think you're becoming someone easy to connect with. But what you don't realize is, from that very moment, you've already placed yourself in a very low position. No one says it out loud, but they feel it. You need them. And in the world of power, that single signal is enough to define how they see you. You have to understand this. People don't evaluate you based on what you say. They evaluate you based on the internal state you project. And your state is saying something very clear. I need to be accepted. That is one of the weakest signals you can send. Not because wanting connection is wrong, but because when you express it too clearly, you've handed power over to others. You're telling them, without opening your mouth, you have more value than I do in this situation. And immediately, they will treat you that way. You'll be interrupted. You'll be overlooked. You won't be noticed. Not because they are bad, but because you established your position from the beginning. This is something most people never realize. They think if they try harder, be friendlier, more agreeable, things will improve. No. The more they try, the more they are undervalued. Because their effort doesn't come from confidence, it comes from need. And need always lowers value. You can hide it with words. You can try to appear calm. But your body, your eyes, your response timing reveal everything. You reply too quickly. You're always available. You never create space. You think that's enthusiasm? No, that's dependence. And humans have a very strange instinct. They don't value what is always available. They are not attracted to what has no gravity. They are only drawn to what doesn't fully belong to them. Do you see that? The people who get the most attention in a group are usually not the ones who talk the most. They don't try to please. They don't react immediately. They don't follow others' rhythm. They maintain a very subtle distance. Not cold,
but not easy to reach either. And that distance creates attraction. While you are doing the opposite. You're always present. You always respond. You always try to maintain the connection. You don't allow anything the chance to develop. You suffocate curiosity before it even forms. You think you're building a relationship, but in reality, you're destroying it from the start. This is a truth you may not want to hear. No one is attracted to someone who always needs them. It sounds harsh, but it's true. People are attracted to value, and value never comes with neediness. Value comes with choice. A valuable person doesn't have to be there. They choose to be there. That difference is very small, but it changes how you are perceived entirely. You can't fake that. You can't just act less interested. If inside you are still waiting for a response, it will show. If you stay silent, but in your head you're counting every second, it will show. If you create distance but hope others will fill it, it will show.
You cannot simulate power. You have to have it. And power here is not about controlling others. It starts with no longer needing their validation. This is where most people fail. They don't lack technique. They lack foundation. They are still operating from a very deep fear. Fear of being left behind. Fear of not being good enough. Fear of not being chosen. And when you are afraid, every action carries that trace. You can try to control your words, but you cannot control the feeling others get from you. They don't analyze you. They feel you. And that feeling decides everything. You don't need to say, "Please stay with me." They already know. You don't need to show that you need them. They already feel it. And from that moment, the game is over before it even truly begins. This leads you to an important realization. The problem is not what you say. The problem is the state you enter each interaction with. If you enter with the mindset of seeking acceptance, you will always be in a lower position. If you enter with the mindset of choosing, everything will change. But to do that, you have to accept something much harder. You have to be willing to not be liked. You have to be willing to be silent, willing to not respond immediately, willing to let space exist, and most importantly, willing to not chase. Not to play psychological games, but because you no longer need to. When you reach that state, you no longer send the signal, "Please accept me." You start sending a different signal. You can come, but you don't have to. And that signal is what begins to change how the world responds to you. You don't need more. You just need to stop displaying lack. The moment you stop, everything starts to shift. And that's only the first layer of the problem. Because even when you stop needing, you may still be destroying your value in another way, a more subtle way, a way that most people never realize until it's too late. You think that if you explain more clearly, people will understand you better. You think that if you explain enough, people will respect you more. You think that if you share more, you will be connected. It sounds reasonable, but in reality, it works in the opposite direction. The more you talk, the more you reveal things you cannot control. Not information, but state. You're not just communicating content, you're revealing your position. Observe yourself in a conversation. When a silence appears, what do? You fill it. Almost immediately. You add more. You explain more. You add details. You do everything to keep the flow from breaking. You think that's communication skill? No, that's fear. You fear silence. You fear being judged. You fear that if you stop, others will lose interest. And that fear makes you lose control. You no longer choose your words. You react. You speak to relieve, not to influence. This is a difference very few people realize. Communication is not talking. Communication is influence. If what you say does not change how others feel, then you are not communicating. You are just making noise. And when you talk too much, you begin to fall into a very dangerous state. You lower your own value, because value is always tied to selectivity. What is rare has weight. What is abundant is taken lightly. You say everything you think. You share everything you know. You hold nothing back. And that makes you predictable. No depth, no curiosity, no reason for others to want to explore further. You've already put everything out from the start. There's nothing left for them to stay for. This is why there are people who speak very little. But every time they open their mouth, the entire space pays attention. Not because they are more special than you, but because they understand one simple thing. Silence is also part of communication. In fact, it is the strongest part. When you don't speak, others begin to think. They fill in the gaps themselves. They ask questions. They direct attention toward you, but you never give them that chance. You always fill everything. You don't let any space exist long enough to create attraction. You don't give others a reason to initiate. You do everything for them. And when you do that, you unintentionally teach them one thing. They don't need to make an effort to understand you. You will hand everything to them. This may seem small, but it changes the entire balance of power in an interaction. The one who talks more is usually the one with less power. The one who tries to explain is usually in the lower position. The one who always responds is usually waiting to be accepted. You may not realize it, but others feel it clearly. They don't need to analyze you. They just feel your rhythm. Fast, continuous, uncontrolled. And from that they conclude, you have no position. You are trying. You are seeking. This is an uncomfortable truth. No one respects a person who cannot control their own words. Not because the words are wrong, but because it shows you cannot control yourself. And if you cannot control yourself, why should they value you? Power begins with control. Not controlling others, but controlling your own reactions. You can stop when you want. You can stay silent when needed. You are not pulled by silence. That is what creates weight. You don't need to say more. You need to say less, but with intention. Every sentence you speak must have a reason. Every word you choose must carry weight. If not, it's better not to speak. This does not mean you become cold. It does not mean you disconnect. It means you begin to choose. You don't react immediately. You observe. You think. You decide. And when you speak from position, not from need. This difference is subtle, but it completely changes how others perceive you. You are no longer the one trying to maintain the conversation. You become the one controlling its rhythm. You are no longer the one filling the gaps. You become the one creating the gaps and controlling them. And when you do that, something interesting begins to happen. Others start talking more. They start filling the space you leave. They start trying to maintain the connection with you. Not because you changed them, but because you changed your position. You are no longer the follower. You become the reference point. But this is not the deepest layer of the problem. You can speak less. You can control your words. But if inside you still lack a center, you will still be overlooked. Because in the end, people are not attracted to silence. They are attracted to the force behind that silence. And if you have no force, your silence is just emptiness. You have started speaking less. You have tried to control your reactions. You no longer rush to fill the silence like before. But one thing has not changed. Others are still not attracted to you. They don't clearly avoid you. They don't directly reject you. But they also don't initiate toward you. You are there, but you leave no trace. This is when you have to face a deeper truth. The problem is not how much you speak. The problem is whether you have something that pulls others in. You have no center. And a person without a center cannot create attraction. You have to understand this clearly. People don't connect just because you are kind. They don't stay just because you are pleasant. They are pulled in because you create a clear feeling, a direction, an identity, something that makes them know who you are, even if you don't say much. But you are different. You adjust yourself to each person. You change the way you speak to fit. You mirror the other person's energy. You think that is flexibility. No, that is a lack of definition. You don't have a fixed axis. You don't stand anywhere. And when you don't stand anywhere, others don't know where to place you in their mind. You become vague. You become someone pleasant, but not memorable. You can appear in a conversation. You can join a group. But when you leave, nothing remains. No impression, no emotion, no reason for them to think of you again. This is what most people misunderstand. They think that to be liked, they must be easy to blend in. They must be a bit like everyone else. They must not be uncomfortable. They must keep everything stable. But that is exactly what makes them disappear. Because attraction does not come from blending in. It comes from controlled difference. You don't need to become strange. You don't need to force attention. But you must have a point you do not change. A perspective, a way of reacting, a standard, something others can feel, even if you don't explain it. You must have an inner axis. If not, you will always be pulled by the environment around you. And when you are pulled, you have no pull. You are just part of the flow. No one is attracted to the flow. They are attracted to what resists it. Look at the people you remember the longest. They are not the ones who talk the most. They are not the ones who try to please everyone. They have a very strange stability. They don't change with each person. They don't try to be accepted. They show up as themselves, without explaining, without asking permission, without over-adjusting. And that creates weight. You cannot fully read them immediately. You cannot fully predict them in one conversation. There is always a part just out of reach, and that part creates curiosity. While you are doing the opposite. You are easy to understand. You are easy to predict. You have no layer underneath. Others look at you and they see everything. There is nothing more to discover, no reason to stay. This is where many people get confused. They think they need to become mysterious. They start forcing silence. They try to appear unpredictable. They try to create distance. But inside, they are still empty. And that emptiness still shows. Because attraction does not come from behavior. It comes from what is inside you. If you have nothing to hold, every technique is just a shell. You can stay silent. But if that silence contains nothing, it creates no pressure. It only creates meaningless emptiness. You can speak less. But if each sentence you say does not carry a clear perspective, it creates no impression. It just passes by. This is why you need to build a center, not to perform, but to exist as a fixed point. You must have something you believe in, something you do not easily change, something you bring into every interaction. You don't need to say it, just embody it. Others will feel it. They won't always agree with you, but they will remember you. And in this world, being remembered is more important than being liked. Because attraction does not come from pleasing. It comes from creating emotion. It could be curiosity, it could be challenge, it could be a bit of discomfort, but it must be something. You cannot let others leave without taking something of you with them. That is the clearest sign that you have no center. You leave no mark. You create no impact. You occupy no place in their mind. And when that happens long enough, you begin to feel invisible. You don't understand why. You think you did everything right. You were kind, you listened, you didn't bother anyone. But that is the problem. You are trying to not do anything wrong, when you need to do one thing right. Create a presence with weight. Not by being loud, not by seeking attention, but by having an axis you do not leave. When you have an axis, you don't need to try to attract. Attraction appears naturally. Others won't always understand you, but they will feel you, and that feeling is what keeps them. But even when you begin to have a center, you can still make another mistake, a more subtle mistake. A mistake that keeps you in a lower position even after you've changed so much. You've started to change. You no longer rush to seek acceptance. You no longer talk too much. You've begun to build an inner center, but there is still one thing keeping you in a lower position. You are still seeing the world from your own perspective. You enter a conversation and you think, what should I say so they like me? How should I react so I'm not judged? What should I do to keep this conversation flowing? Everything revolves around you, not because you're selfish, but because you don't realize that is the problem. You are too much in your own head. You are not truly seeing the other person. You are only trying to manage your image in their eyes. And that makes you miss the most important thing. Other people don't care about you as much as you think. They are busy with themselves, their needs, their pressures, their problems, the things that worry them. But you don't see that. You only see yourself in that interaction. This is why you are always in a reactive position. You respond based on what you think they want, instead of reading what they actually need. You reply quickly because you think it's polite, but maybe they need space. You talk a lot because you think it keeps the conversation alive, but maybe they lost interest a long time ago. You try to agree because you think it helps you be accepted, but maybe they are looking for someone with their own perspective. You are playing a game without looking at the board. You only look at your own moves. And when you only look at yourself, you are always one step behind. You always react instead of leading. This is where real power begins to appear, not in what you say, but in understanding what others are thinking before they say it. You must learn to step out of your own head, not to become someone else, but to see them more clearly. You must ask yourself, what does this person want? What captures their attention? What makes them defensive? What makes them open up? You don't need perfect answers. You just need to start observing their eyes, their speaking pace, how they react to each topic. You will see very small signals, a fleeting interest, a slight discomfort, a moment of distraction. These things say more than words, but you were never taught how to see. You were only taught how to speak. And that is why you are always at a disadvantage. The one who understands others has the advantage. The one who only understands themselves is limited. You must accept one thing. Communication is not self-expression. Communication is direction. It sounds cold, but it is the truth. You don't need to manipulate. You don't need to be fake, but you must be aware. You cannot enter an interaction without knowing what you are doing. Otherwise, you will always be pulled along. You will speak when they want you to speak. You will stay silent when they make you silent. You will react to their rhythm, and you will never control your position. You think that if you are just yourself, everything will be natural. No, natural does not mean effective. If your natural is unconscious reaction, then you are placing yourself in a weak position. You need a gap, a very small gap between stimulus and response, a moment where you don't react immediately. You observe, you read, you choose. That moment is where power appears. You are no longer pulled by the situation. You begin to shape it. You are no longer driven by immediate emotion. You begin to use it. You notice when others lose focus. You pause. You notice when they are interested. You go deeper. You notice when they are defensive. You shift direction. You no longer speak from instinct. You speak from strategy. And this strategy is not to control them, but to avoid being controlled. This is a difference very few people reach. They think they need to speak better. They train communication skills. They learn storytelling. They learn how to impress, but they still fail because they do not understand the other person. They are talking while others are no longer listening. They are trying to impress while others have already withdrawn. They are putting effort at the wrong time. You don't need to speak better. You need to see clearer. When you see clearly, you will know when to speak, when to stop, when to create space, when to move closer. Everything becomes more precise. And when you are precise, you don't need to try hard. You don't need to push. You just need to place correctly, and everything will move. This is where you shift from participant to shaper. You are no longer just existing in the interaction. You begin to influence it. You don't need to speak much. You don't need to appear special. If you understand others, you are already one step ahead. But there is still a final layer. A layer that if you don't see, everything you build will keep collapsing. You may not need. You may speak less. You may have a center. You may read others. But if the way you appear in their eyes is still wrong, you will still be placed in a lower position. And that is where most people fail, even after they have come very far. You have changed a lot. You no longer need acceptance like before. You no longer talk too much to fill space. You are beginning to have a center. You are starting to observe others instead of only yourself. But there is still one thing that determines the entire outcome: how you are perceived. Not who you really are, but the image others create of you in their minds. You may have value, you may have depth, you may have control. But if others don't feel it, then for them, it does not exist. This is what many people refuse to accept. They believe that as long as the inside is right, everything will adjust itself. No, the world does not work like that. People cannot see inside you. They don't have time to analyze you. They don't care enough to figure you out. They only look at signals. The way you enter a space, the way you look at others, the way you react when interrupted, the way you stay calm when things don't go your way. All of those things form an impression, and that impression is formed very quickly, so quickly you don't even notice. In the first few seconds, others have already placed you in a position in their minds. Everything you do after that, only reinforces that position. You must understand one thing. In the social world, perception is reality. Not objective truth, but how others feel when they are around you. If they feel you are weak, you will be treated as weak. If they feel you have no weight, you will be ignored. It doesn't matter what you think about yourself. What matters is what they feel. This is where all your effort can be canceled out. You can stay silent, but your eyes are unstable. You can speak less, but your energy is hesitant. You can keep distance, but inside you are still waiting for a response. You think you are in control, but the signals you send say the opposite. And people don't believe words, they believe feelings. You don't need to say you lack confidence, they already feel it. You don't need to explain that you have value. If they don't feel it, it means nothing. This is the hardest part, because you cannot fake it. You cannot just learn a few techniques and think you have changed how others see you. You can control behavior for a short time, but you cannot sustain it if your internal state does not change. Because how you are perceived does not come from one action. It comes from consistency, from how you show up repeatedly, from how you react in unexpected moments, from how you remain yourself when no one is watching. You cannot turn it on when needed and turn it off when not. It has to become your default state. This is where many people fail. They try to fix behavior but not the state. They try to speak less, but inside they are still anxious. They try to appear calm, but inside they still fear being judged. They try to create distance, but inside they still want attention. And that contradiction always shows, not clearly, but enough for others to feel. And when they feel that inconsistency, they don't trust you. Not because you are wrong, but because you are unstable. In the world of power, stability creates trust. Not perfection, not intelligence. Stability. You don't need to do more. You just need to become more consistent. If you are silent, be truly calm. If you speak, have weight. If you show up, be clear. No need to show off. Just don't be contradictory. When your inside and outside begin to align, something changes. Others begin to feel you differently. Not because you say something new, but because you no longer send the old signals. You are no longer rushed. You no longer need. You no longer try. And that creates a new image. An image that needs no explanation. An image with weight. But you must understand one thing clearly. You cannot fully control how others see you. You can only influence it. You can adjust signals. You can reduce noise. You can maintain consistency. But in the end, each person will still see you in their own way. And that is why you cannot live to please everyone. You just need to be clear enough so the right people see you correctly. When that happens, everything starts to change. Not because you are lucky, but because for the first time, the image you project is no longer in conflict with who you are becoming. And when that happens, you are no longer overlooked. You begin to have a position. Not because you try harder, but because you finally became consistent. At this point, you can no longer say you don't understand. You have seen the problem clearly. Not because you are not good enough, not because you are different, not because the world does not fit you, but because of how you show up in that world. You have been sending signals that you need acceptance. You have been talking too much to hide uncertainty. You have not had a center to create attraction. You have not read others, so you always react late. And finally, you have not controlled how you are perceived. All of these things no one told you. They just left, silently, politely, without explanation. And you called that not a match. But now you have seen the truth. You are not being rejected. You are placing yourself in a position no one wants to choose. This is where most people stop. They understand, they nod, they feel like they just woke up. Then tomorrow, they go back to the same patterns. Do you know why? Not because they are stupid, but because their patterns are stronger than their awareness. You do not live by what you understand. You live by what you repeat. You are used to reacting quickly. You are used to seeking acceptance. You are used to adjusting yourself to fit. Those things do not disappear just because you watched a video. They are embedded in how you see, how you speak, how you enter a space. And if you do not change there, everything will repeat. The same feeling, the same result. You will walk into another group. You will try again. You will be overlooked again. And you will ask again, why me? No, the right question is, what am I signaling that I'm not aware of? The moment you start asking that, you begin to take control of the game again. Not by trying harder, but by removing what is weakening you. Speak less, slow down, observe more. Don't react immediately, not to become cold, but so you are no longer driven by unconscious fear. You don't need to become someone else. You just need to stop doing the things that make you look low value. That alone will start to change everything. If you are still trying to be recognized by talking more, by being more agreeable, by always being available, then you are going in the wrong direction. You don't need more, you need less, but right. And if you begin to recognize yourself in this, don't ignore that feeling, because most people will. They will return to their old life and continue not understanding why nothing changes. But you have seen enough to not go back to the same way again. And if you want to continue seeing truths no one tells you, if you want to understand how people really operate, and how to build a position without begging for attention, then you should stay. Subscribe to the Rise of Mind channel, not for motivation, but so you stop being controlled without realizing it. Are you trying to prove your value, or are you creating it? Answer honestly, because that answer is your true position in this game.